How are you? I know that.
Okay, everyone, welcome tonight. Thank you. We're so pleased with the crowd that we have here. Hey, this is good. I'm a little concerned though, because I noticed everybody as they came in, most of them sat in the very back of the room. Look at the back of the room. The back of the room is completely full. We know how they went through high school. You tried to get back, there's been a seat back there, at least I think.
No, I
was back
tried.
there too.
I moved over.
I thought you made them sit back there.
No. Anyway, I think as we open up, I'd like for us to be able to, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Margot Mooring, and she's with the Northeast Florida Regional Council, and she's gonna take over this meeting and facilitate it, so. But I just want to thank all of you. As we go forward, we probably might even have another meeting, encourage people to attend and give their input. It's important. So with that, we want to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Banks is not here tonight to offer our invitation, but it will just, everyone just bow your heads for just a moment, and we'll just ask, Lord, please be with all of us tonight and be with the city. Continue to wrap your arms around us in Jesus' most precious name. Amen. And there we go. Thank you. Marco, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, everyone. And I am very pleased to see everyone here. And I can tell you that we don't always get too many folks coming out. So this is wonderful that you're all here. So what we're doing here this evening is, you guys know you have a comprehensive plan. And the comp plan is kind of the big picture for the city, right? So the state requires you to have it. There are things that you need to have. It's solid.
No.
See, I could sit back there and then I don't mind it. Sure.
Do you want to sit back there?
No,
I just want you guys to, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it working?
Do you want us to turn that around? Would that be easier to turn? the
I'm
podium
gonna
around?
sit, I'm gonna take advantage of sitting back.
Okay, that gavel, just use it when you need to be
Okay.
proud, okay?
Okay. Because this will never happen again, you know?
Yeah, you have our permission, to use that gavel when you need to.
Can I test it?
Yes.
Sure. Ooh, I know.
Okay. All right. So are you hearing me?
Yes.
Great, okay, sorry about that. So we were talking, I'm not gonna tell you that much about comprehensive plans, but just the context is the state requires you to have one. There are things that are required to be in them. And they're supposed to be the very high level plan that kind of reflects the vision for the city. And there are other kind of requirements of what needs to be in your comprehensive plan. And I'm a planner and I dream at night about things like this, but you guys don't. So I just want to give you kind of that overview. Having said that, the state requires you to have a plan and also requires you to do what's called an evaluation and appraisal review of that plan every 7 years. And that's what this is. So we're required, all jurisdictions are required to look at their plan every 7 years. And there's kind of the things that they need to look at. One is what statutory changes have been made? What has the legislature changed in the last 7 years about comprehensive plans that you now need to incorporate? So that's one thing we need to look at. Another thing we need to look at is there are specific requirements that reviewing agencies look at. And I call them reviewing agencies, but they're agencies that work on things that are related to comprehensive plans. So for example, the Water Management District, or FDEP, or DOT. Their standards change, things get updated. As part of this 7-year review, we call it the year, we planners call it the year review. As part of the year review, we're required to see what has changed for those reviewing agencies so that the plan is consistent with how they're actually doing the review. And then we also look at the map, if it's necessary to look at the map, and make any updates that are required. Now, our understanding of how you guys have been doing business in Crescent City is that you've been excellent at keeping things like the map updated. So we're not aware of any changes that are needed to the map, but we have copies of the map here today, and I'll kind of tell you why. Because there's a couple, we're trying to do kind of two things as we do this. So the evaluation and appraisal review is, or can be a little, even coming from a planner, it can be a little bureaucratic, right? Because we're just doing these statutory changes, these, what are the regulatory agencies looking at? So it could be crashingly boring, right? And as a planner, I can tell you it could be. So we certainly want the public to know what we're doing when we do this work. And so we have a workshop to talk about what we're proposing to change. And we have a kind of underlined, strengthened version of each of the elements of the comp plan. They call them elements, you know, everything's defined in state statute. And that's kind of a working document of what we propose to change. So those are available for your comment because you may know things we don't know, and you certainly want to know that. But the other thing is we want to know what you're thinking because this is an opportunity, since you have to look at the plan anyway, and most folks don't read their comp plan often. So since you kind of have to look at it anyway, we want to know bigger picture what you think. So that's why, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but we designed a very, very broad survey about Crescent City that asks questions like, you know, it's not a scientific survey, not at all, but it asks questions like, what is your relationship to Crescent City? And then what should change in Crescent City and what should not change in Crescent City? Those really big picture things. And then similarly tonight, we have the elements of the comprehensive plan. We have hard copies on the tables, and we have members of the staff of the regional council who are going to write down what you have to say in various areas that may be of interest to you. So we have Eric, raise your hand. Housing and transportation. That's what Eric is going to be available to take down what you think about it. Lee is conservation and recreation open space. We tried to kind of bunch them together. I get what most people think are the boring things about infrastructure, so I'm in that corner there. And Robert has the future land use element, which is where the land uses are defined, as well as the property rights element, which is one of those statutory changes that has been made since the last time. So each comp plan has to have a property rights element. And in fact, the state, in adopting the legislation, gave us the text for such an element. So we're proposing to use the text that they proposed. So that's kind of the overview. And what we're hoping will that you guys will be willing to kind of help us do is, to the extent that you have thoughts about the city that you want to share in those kind of topic areas, please do tell us, even if it doesn't seem like something that's going to be in this part of the, you know, this kind of update to the comp plan, because it is sort of bureaucratic and you know, regulatory, if you will. But we are trying to capture that information so we know what you guys think. We'll put together the results of the survey. There's kind of two things going on here. We're doing this work under a grant that we got from the state. So we have deliverables we have to provide to them. We're going to give them the results of the survey as of October 29th. And we're going to be looking at what we'll be kind of putting it together with the results of this meeting, plus what, comes in as of that week, that final week in October. However, you guys can leave the survey up and get it out to far more people perhaps than have taken it already. Because the state doesn't care about that, but what matters is that Crescent City has the information about what people are thinking, because that may help you going forward. I understand you're looking at land development regulations at some point, and you may want to make larger changes, more kind of broad changes to the comprehensive plan at some time, but that will help you to kind of understand. Again, it's not scientific, but it will at least have it will be a way to know what people thought, and hopefully will help you with your planning going forward. So after this, it just kind of becomes a people milling around, talking to us about things that you care about Crescent City, and we write it down. The other thing is, if you don't want to talk to us, we will not be insulted, but there is a thoughts to share sheet on that middle table right there, and some pens, and you can just write it down. So, you can kind of give us that kind of information. The survey also has the online survey also has a kind of open-ended question. What do you want the planning team to know? But this is essentially that. And if you just want to write something down, that's fine. Otherwise, if you come talk to us about the things that you care about, we will write them down and then put them all together. And at the end of the day, you'll have a compliant plan that will make the state happy. Which you then can do whatever it is you want to do with. And you'll also have some kind of guidance about thoughts that members, folks that live in the city or care about the city have shared about things that happen next, and hopefully that'll be useful to the city. Are there any questions? Because after this, we just kind of talk. Any thoughts for me? Sure.
I have a question I would like you to ask, and that is, how do the people attending find out about the meeting?
And I'm afraid that's not something that's on the regional council. That's something that the city would have to answer.
So can you figure out how people can find out about the meeting? Okay.
No, because she's facilitating the meeting, she's facilitating.
So do you mind if I ask?
No, by all means. I just don't know how the word was gotten out. So
Okay,
Charles would
well,
know the answers to that.
What I wanted to do was ask people to just like where they signed in, to just put how they found out about the meeting, whether it was email or on the city website or whatever. So, but don't worry about it. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I'll ask people.
Well, and guys, it's your meeting. There are really no rules for this meeting, so
Okay.
whatever you guys are comfortable with, it's fine with us.
I'll just ask everyone, so that'll work.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
When does the grant end?
It ends, I actually have it here. May 31st, 2022. And I should mention that updates to the comprehensive plan have to be transmitted. And then so there'll be a public hearing that'll happen before the end of February with the transmittal, so you guys will know what we're sending off to the state. And then the reviewing agencies and the state Department of Economic Opportunity reviews it, gives us comments frequently, and then it needs to get adopted by May 31st. Okay, but at that point, you'll have a 100% compliant comprehensive plan, which is a good place to be.
Any support after that? Any support after that, or available grants after that to?
Well, that is actually a really good question. The Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, who's funding this work for the council, they do that every year. And they're receptive to, especially communities that are kind of paying attention and in compliance and like have done, they're checking boxes, but once those boxes are checked, you're more likely to get funded. So yes, there is kind of ongoing support, at least there has been in recent years. Sir?
Does historic preservation fall into one of these
Historic preservation is going to be in future land use. That's one of the things that the state requires to, number one, be covered. And then, kind of what it says goes in future land use. So that's where I would start with that. I don't think there's much in there now, but it's certainly worth a look.
Margo, will we have an opportunity to have a second meeting down the road, or is this gonna be the meeting?
Well, this is the meeting for the evaluation and appraisal review. With the caveat that there will be a public hearing associated with the,
So they can continue to have input.
absolutely.
Okay,
right.
I just wanna make sure. And then if anybody later on thinks of something, they can reach out in what way to have it added to through the survey or.
Well, the survey is a great way to do it.
Okay.
And we'll keep that survey open for as long as the city wants us to keep it open.
Good,
We're happy to
good.
do that.
So we can encourage our neighbors and everybody else. to
Absolutely.
Make sure they reach out to it. Okay, thank you.
Is the current comp plan on the city website?
Yes. Thank you.
So what you'll find around the room is there's 10 copies of each element. Kind of using using the assumption that not everybody's passionate about all of the elements of the comp plan. But certainly, take a look at them, ask us questions about them, but more sort of specifically, if you have thoughts in the area of transportation and housing, if there are things you want to make sure that people know about your thoughts in transportation and housing, just tell us that. And that may well have applications in the land development code and not the comp plan, but we want to capture them anyway. So just tell us what you think. Yes, ma'am.
When you speak of transportation, does that mean like locally from here to somewhere else? Or?
It's roads in general, but it's also, bicycle paths and trails and anything to do with transportation. And you guys have water, so there's all sorts of transportation, and I can't say it's everything that needs to be in there is in there now. But by all means, if there are things that you would like to make sure we know need to be in there, just let us know, we'll write it down.
What about trees? Because like we used to be a tree city and now trees are just like.
Absolutely, that's the kind of sentiment we want to hear. And that would be Lee, who's Conservation and Recreation Open Space. And obviously you can tell any of us anything, but we're just trying to keep it a little bit kind of organized. But yeah, by all means, tell us what you think about trees. Okay, makes sense. After this is kind of anarchy and we just kind of mill about, so. Okay, but I'm around for questions. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate this very good turnout.
So let me just go around, right?
Yeah, everybody just grab
Okay.
kind of
and try not-
area of passion.
Yeah, there are no rules anymore.
Project, you know, retirement, it's retired project. Yeah, a lot of work that.
Sure, you're all being so nice. What? To me, that That's not.
And they said that too.
Leaving me. I need it.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, no, take that from everybody.
I'm very interested. I didn't know what's about that.
Yeah, Monday morning.
This child I have not had. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it's not good. She really is a hot place. I have I'll catch up with you. Okay? Sounds good. Ready?
Your wilderness.
All right, guys.
I gotta catch up with my.
Thanks so much. I think she went to the back.
That's right.
Yeah, that's not even right.
Correct. Ran away from it.
Looked at it, see what our numbers were. And
Charles, everything okay?
Everything's good. Traffic on the device,
On your
but it was.
bringing in your, I don't know, this would have probably happened anyways. But it's a different.
Unfortunately, it feels like they'll start all around. And I want to get a tour sometime.
By all means.
Yeah, so what you would do.
We're having a
I want to
Christmas
grab
party
one.
next week. And that's our first. So the question of when we go. Well,
I'm new. 2 months.
good history programs.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Had a great year this year.
No, we saw over.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Good seeing you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it. See you in Vermont.
Okay. Yeah, no, yes.
Tonight, y'all, thank
That's
you.
another thing we can control.
Yes, yes. Is that if you're out there and you open the door, you were part of it.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember my mom had a house across the street.
It's always real sick.
Yeah, yeah.
Our strategic planning.
And that's why the.
No, the main. The third here, this. This is
Done
the-
school like Scott.
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit. Yeah.
So I look at this all the documents.
Maybe you'll do it.
Your usual process. Your comprehensive plan.
Oh. They actually produced their discussion. Like group.
and activities, including future life.
I encourage you all to revisit this, I think this is regular basis. This is something for you to look at and you brand. It's like,
Yeah, that's how.
I said, that's just the legislative process.
Oh, and.
Appreciate the state, what's it just as or or go through other processes.
Well, we need it.
Part of this is, I described earlier,
Okay.
it's great if this is.
Yeah, I mean, some of these
Somebody's also responsible for looking at it, seeing if it's accomplishing. So.
Our forefathers didn't see fit to run the tracks through town.
You know, there's several. of them.
Well, they're very close.
You know, obligations, we will work 5% threshold. That's great.
Very, very
Well,
close.
I'm just telling you that,
Or the train station. We have a train station.
well,
Yeah. And that's the hard. part.
There were conversations
Honestly,
years ago about that. We're going to move the Amtrak over to coast.
Policy.
And abandon it, like they tried to close the Slack station.
Before I got, you're binding yourself. Or you got something.
Yeah.
Saying.
So the thing, if we have
But
this
really, what
train,
comes after is your land development. This is your aspect.
I wrote this for parking.
But- if that was such a help, if you could go to
Yes.
if you go to Jacksonville.
Can you imagine the train went away and that became a rail trail? And you could drive, you could go to Jacksonville or to Orlando on that right away.
But
You're also.
you're asking about
Dreaming.
Yeah.
No, I don't like rail trails because I would like to take you to Jacksonville. So I would like to go to Jacksonville.
So let's build a big picture where we want to go. and
Or
develop
go to
this.
Boston. Go to Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is
And then
why it's so difficult.
they would make it like the
Set the standard for how it's-
That's
So we would say like, I'm sorry, Constitution, or you can, go play.
Jacksonville's had, Jacksonville had any discussion about metro?
They got it, they have, people already heard the conversation.
Downtown,
yeah.
The land's finding you the Sunrail stuff. They're way up there.
Oh, I mean,
So in the lower end of the 20, 30, 20, 40, whatever the year is, you know, I think there's something like real estate, you know, I mean, really all of Florida, but I don't know.
keep your mitts off our rail track. We've already gotten laid.
Well, I'm saying, if they were to abandon it, it's not, all hope would not be lost.
We don't want them to abandon it, we want them to get us a train and let us, you know, do. I mean, exactly, exactly. Have you seen the traffic out there? I'm tired of it, I don't want to worry about where the car is. You know, the last time I went to Target, I noticed that one lane, somebody tried to run over. It's just about. But the train, get off, then you get a Uber to take you to one.
Yeah.
We don't even have it. Well, when you get to Orlando, when you get back here, you leave your car, or you have your friend. Here, it's easy. When you get to Orlando, that's.
Right. Yeah, because we don't have anything like that.
No, but all it takes is, because, you know, but anybody to do, I mean, that would be something. I don't know, that's really for private business, but Uber just needs to find out. That's all it needs. We had one guy who did.
We hear we call it Goober.
That's true. Oh, that could be a whole new business. Remember, like, you know. Well, send them an email as well. We, who knows, maybe we just for a grant to start a Cooper. And, you know, like, that's not a bad idea. That's a bad idea. If I can do have here, the share right away. Maybe we could piggyback on that, because the problem with Uber is it is quite expensive. And when you're here, you know, get out of there. You don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, but
Okay, we need like a little stuff, and then we'll just have.
Yeah.
Right, you guys were there.
Yeah, tell me how I board, be a driver.
Yeah, exactly. You need to go back.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then
Some of
instead of,
those-
like, you know how Lyft has the Mustang or whatever, and
Yeah.
like, you have, what would you have, like a, have a cat?
I have,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, not the top hat, but. you know,
Baseball game.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like the, like the John Deere.
Yeah.
Little rocks and speed. Liz, here, what I had, and then I found it. Anyway, so
Yeah,
that's
we got better
it.
response than the other side.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just by far. Well,
How about in our?
so this is us meeting.
Oh, yeah.
We win.
Yeah.
There.
Well, okay, but when you're ahead, you have to take notes.
Yeah.
When you're ahead, yes, we win.
All right, have a good night. Did you get your packet?
I did.
Some light reading.
Yeah, well, I told, I offered Karen a trade, I said, I'll do that, and oh, no, they're done already. And you, it's too heavy, there's too much here.
It's already ready. Where you guys in it?
How did it go?
No, thanks.
Reevaluate that.
I had jumped again a week, maybe sneak in and. Or like so.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
I pulled it out of my little box, I got all ready to go.
We're actually switching to a webinar format so that whatever's projected can share a screen share. So you go home like. Wondering what to look at.
Yeah.
Great to see you again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, wherever that voices.
Did we switch to webinar yet or is it?
Very late.
Yeah. It's not gonna be like pretty.
That allows for a little input too, doesn't it?
I think you could allow.
It's a catch 22. It's
I can print.
having virtually available, I think it's hugely important, actually. Because from evening to.
Yeah, but I want to be able to share something.
Yeah, that's great. All right.
Well, thanks for coming in.
We'll miss it now, so Thursday. Happy
Thanks.
Saturday.
Thanks, online.
Yes, okay.
Well, I always submission is there's like 8 consultants.
Oh, right.
Three mining firms and 5
Oh, yeah.
It's out there. Good or bad, they'll really be used to beat us up in a year.
Yeah.
That's what it'll be. She's like,
Yeah.
Charlie Bill every year was down because somebody suggested something that we just have to agree. Reason why. So we're doing such a-
So thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's. Guess I must have hacked it.
We'll cross that first one. You know, it's getting harder and harder, they're just not means. It's getting harder and harder to just say this, but I'll say it anyway. They're really not important. Only half of them live in town.
So how do we look?
I'll see y'all later, thank you. Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, very much, learned a lot. It's like the other way around, but I can do that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Y'all later. Absolutely.
Bye, Scott.
Bye, Michelle. See you.
Thank you.
All right. Great turnout.
Zoom?
Oh, yeah. We're still live?
Is anybody on this Zoom?
I'll know there in a second.
Okay.
There was, three participants here.
Those are reviewing agents.
Guys, are there folks from reviewing agencies who are online?
Is Scott still here?
Well, certainly thank you to anyone who participated.
All right.
Can I say? Where's the full set? Full set.
Yeah.
You just have to, right?
I just had housing and track.
Okay. so
We'll
let's-
send it an email tomorrow saying where to start participating. You have our plans.
So how do you feel about that with me sitting there and you think that?
Yeah, don't worry.
That's a fantastic way.
So do you know, Robert, there are 3 people on the Zoom. Well, yes, but I mean, never. So we need to ask that question.
And they are coming out of there, yeah,
So
going in,
if
coming
this
out.
isn't the right
We can
person,
always send
Well,
out.
I tell you, I was going to South Korea, but they not have like.
that sounds like a great way to plug on it, and in an informal fashion.
Yeah, questions came up.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, do you have your printouts? Any of your printouts, or do you know what?
We didn't go now.
I didn't get the printout.